Hello and welcome to our series on trauma-informed practices. We will begin with approaching nutrition security with compassion and connection. We want to thank Second Harvest Food Bank of Southern Wisconsin for sponsoring the creation of these videos. In this video, we will explore the many ways food can hold meaning in our lives, examine the intersection of trauma and nourishment, and discuss how stress and adversity can complicate our quest for wellness. In your discussion guide, you will see a link to the Meaning of Food in Life questionnaire. If you're able to, pause this video and take the questionnaire, then resume the video when you are finished. Before we dive into the complexities of trauma and adversity, I want to take a moment to talk about the different ways food can hold meaning in our lives. We can break down the meaning of food into 5 domains. We have the aesthetic aspect of food. A meal can be a work of art. Some of us may really appreciate the visual aspects of food, like how it's arranged on a plate, the colors there, or the garnishes that can be added. Then there is the social domain, which highlights how food can connect us with our culture and community. Food is often a focal point of social gatherings or holidays, friends and family coming together around the table to share a meal, and this aspect of food may be quite meaningful for some of us. Then there's the health aspect of food, meaning we place importance on how food nourishes our bodies and minds. For some of us, we care a great deal about the impact that food has on our mental and physical health. Then we have the sacred domain. Food connects me to a greater entity. Food may be connected to a spiritual or religious practice and is a way we show commitment to our faith. And finally, there is the moral relationship to food. I care about the impact of my food choices on the world. Some of us may place great importance on how food choices affect others, the environment, or local economy. If you took the questionnaire online, then you might already know which domains you scored highest in. If you weren't able to take the questionnaire, pause this video and looking at the domains on the screen, which ones do you feel align most strongly with your relationship to food? There is no right or wrong way to relate to food. The variety of meanings that food holds in our lives are all valid. And just like we have a unique but deep relationship with food, so do the neighbors we serve. You might be wondering why this exploration of the meaning of food in our lives is important or relevant to our topic today. When we consider our relationship to food in so many different ways, it's easy to see how our food habits and cultural traditions are very connected to all aspects of our life. Food is not just something that we eat for our health or something to keep our bellies full. It actually has a lot of meaning, and the meaning takes many forms across individuals, communities, and cultures, and may change a lot throughout our lives. Many times when we are working on projects that aim to increase food security or increase nutritious diets, we forget how connected food is to all parts of our life. Take a minute to think about what has shaped your relationship with food over the course of your life. What kinds of things happened in your life that resulted in this relationship? Think about how you learned to eat and cook, what you eat now, how you shop, who you eat with, and how you prepare food. Is food a meaningful part of your day, or just something that needs to happen and you don't really give it too much thought? There are no wrong answers here. The goal is just to do some self-reflection. We believe that cultivating a multidimensional relationship with food can be protective, healing, and actually drive positive, flexible, sustainable, and health-promoting behaviors. We want to push against the idea that for people who are experiencing food insecurity, food is just fuel, calories, and nutrients. Instead, we believe that a rich relationship with food, one that incorporates culture, family, the environment, and our appreciation of beauty, can provide a pathway for long-term nourishment. Learning about and understanding that food can have different meanings in our lives helps us reconsider the meaning of food in our community food programs. Individuals experiencing food insecurity are sometimes given food that may have less meaning to them. Food in distributions is sometimes measured in pounds or meals or calories and does not take into account our deeper connections to the food we eat. But we believe community nutrition and food security programs can promote meaning around food because food does more than fill our bellies or affect our health. Many food distributions now allow neighbors to choose their own items instead of receiving a bag of items they may not recognize or enjoy. Some distributions intentionally offer items that are culturally relevant to their neighbors or try to distribute locally sourced produce and food items. Consider if there are opportunities at your distribution to support the variety of relationships your neighbors have to food. Now, let's move into our next topic, trauma-informed nutrition security. I'd like to start with this quote from Gabor Mate. Trauma is not what happens to you, it's what happens inside of you as a result of what happens to you. Trauma can begin with an event that is stressful, hard, or scary. This can be a single event, like a death or natural disaster, or the ongoing impacts of systemic injustices, like poverty or racism. We call these adverse events, and we'll get into what those can look like in just a moment. Whether an event is traumatic depends on how we experience the event or events, which can vary based on our previous life experiences, environments, genetics, and the presence or lack of community supports around us. All of those things impact the resulting effect. So, two people might witness or be a part of the same event, but the way they experience it may differ because of their life experiences, the environment, their genetics, and how much community support they have. Because of this, the way the event affects them and whether it develops into trauma may be different. When talking about the first E, event, I mentioned adverse events, also called adverse experiences. These are the types of events that have the potential to develop into trauma. Adverse events or adversity can happen in a variety of settings. On this slide, you can see examples of adversities that occur in our household, community, and environment. These types of experiences can be particularly detrimental to our health when they occur as children, but they can cause stress and lead to trauma at any age. Some of these might be loud and obvious, like domestic violence, homelessness, or abuse, while others are more quiet but persistent, like structural racism, substandard schools, and historical trauma. Over time, these quiet traumas continually remind us that the world is not a safe or welcoming place for us. Whether it's a loud or quiet event, adversity affects us in profound ways and changes the way we view and interact with the world around us. Some of these have obvious effects on our diet and relationship to food, like lack of food security and lack of access to nourishment. Others might be less obvious. Lack of water quality might make people fearful of tap water and more likely to consume sweetened beverages. The climate crisis is going to affect our food supply and ultimately food security. Poverty encompasses many of these adversities, including food insecurity, and you can see that poverty itself is an adverse experience. Oftentimes, food insecurity goes beyond just, I didn't have enough to eat today. It's often tied up with a host of other adverse experiences that show up in many ways in our lives. However, adversity is not the only factor at play when it comes to experiences that lead to trauma. Stress also plays a huge role in our ability to be well and to recover from adversity. When thinking about how stress affects us, we all have a natural window of tolerance. When our window is wide, we feel like we can deal with the everyday challenges that occur. And having support and care in our lives widens our window of tolerance, meaning we are more able to handle stressful situations. But frequent adversity and stress shrinks our window of tolerance. So someone who has experienced a lot of adversity may be easily thrown off balance and have a difficult time controlling or even understanding their emotions or feelings. And even after that emotion has passed, it might take that person a longer time to get back to a stable emotional state than someone who has a wider window of tolerance. When we are in our window of tolerance, we are at our best. It's also known as being in a state of rest and digest. Remember the quote I shared earlier in this video, which pointed out that trauma is what happens inside of you as a result of what happens to you? Trauma affects both our brains and our bodies. To highlight the multiple effects that trauma can have on us, I want to first point out what happens inside of us when we are in our window of tolerance. This is where we are using our thinking brain, we're mentally flexible, we can relate with others, be curious and creative, we're able to regulate ourselves and can make decisions, solve problems, and plan for the future. In this window of tolerance, our body is also in the state needed to digest food, absorb nutrients, and engage in important healing and repair processes. This slide shows the optimal stress response, or the stress response of someone who has a wide window of tolerance. If we think of the lightning bolt on the left as a stressful or adverse event, someone with a wide window of tolerance may tend towards hyperarousal, also known as fight or flight, or hypoarousal, also known as fawn or freeze. Moving towards or into either state is an automatic response. We are wired to protect ourselves quickly and without thinking. But you can see that in the face of stress, someone with a wide window of tolerance is able to stay within that window. If they do get pushed out of it, it is usually for a short period of time, and they are able to return to it with greater ease. Here, we can see the stress response of someone who has a smaller window of tolerance. Frequent or prolonged exposure to stress can cause what is called toxic stress, which has harmful effects on our body and brain. If we use the lightning bolt on the left again as the same or similar adverse event, you can see how different the stress response looks. Someone with a smaller window of tolerance may be easily pushed outside of their window of tolerance, bounce back and forth between fight or flight and fawn or freeze. Not only is someone with a toxic stress response more easily pushed into hyper or hypoarousal, but they may have a hard time getting back into their window of tolerance. It can be so challenging that they find themselves perpetually stuck in fight or flight or fawn or freeze. Being in hyperarousal can cause emotions such as anger, anxiety, chaotic energy, hypervigilance, or hyperactivity. Being in hypoarousal can cause emotions like depression, numbness, apathy, shame, disconnection, and a lack of motivation. Neither of these states are ideal, but remember that being pushed into them is an automatic response. It is our brain trying to keep us safe, even if it causes difficult emotions. Once again, remember that trauma and adversity affect our brains and our bodies. In addition to the emotional responses you just saw in the previous slide, toxic stress can cause complications to our health and in our bodies. Things like high or low blood pressure, chronic pain, sleeplessness or chronic fatigue, challenges with digestion and appetite changes. Toxic stress can lead to long-term health issues. Recognizing the physical symptoms on this slide and the emotional effects that you saw on the previous slide can help us better understand and compassionately reframe challenging behaviors and poor health outcomes as resulting from things that a person cannot easily control. Now, it's also important to note that food distribution settings can inadvertently be places where neighbors experience stress and adversity. Stigma. We all know that there is a stigma associated with needing access to a distribution. This stigma often causes participants to feel shame for needing the services, support, and resources that your site may provide. Restriction. A food distribution is a place where order, policies, and rules need to be maintained. However, these rules, while often created to establish equality or equity in a space, may inadvertently create a stressful environment for neighbors who feel that they're being monitored. They might be restricted from accessing everything they desire or can use at your distribution. This stress often accompanies someone experiencing the feast or famine cycle. This cycle proposes that neighbors experiencing prolonged states of food insecurity will be more likely to binge eat during periods of abundance. At a food distribution, This may look like neighbors who take more than the allotted amount of food, or who go to multiple distributions in order to get access to extra food that they might not eat and may end up going bad in order to make sure they feel a sense of abundance when food is available. This cycle is a deep biological urge that neighbors may not even notice they are doing and can't necessarily control. I would like to highlight one way your organizations have addressed this tension by telling participants to take what they can use in place of take what you need. And finally, neighbors may feel a sense of cultural oppression when they aren't able to access food at a distribution that fits their personal cultural needs, or if their preferred language isn't spoken on site. We have examined the various ways in which trauma, stress, and adversity can impact your health, your mindset, and your community. It may seem overwhelming. However, there is good news. Extensive research has demonstrated that positive experiences play a significant role in fostering resilience and healing. Remember when we talked about how an individual's perception of an adverse event is influenced by multiple factors? One of the most important factors is whether positive experiences are present or lacking in our lives before, during, and after we face challenges. Positive experiences are essential not only because they help mitigate the effects of adversity, but also because they are crucial for overall well-being and mental flourishing. They promote resilience and represent the other half of the scientific equation when we analyze the connections between adversity and health. So let's take a moment to define resilience. Resilience is the body and mind's ability to adapt well in the face of adversity, tragedy, threats, or sources of stress. Being alive means that there is a high likelihood that you will experience something very difficult or threatening that takes us off course. Resilience is the ability to stay within our window of tolerance in the face of stress and adversity, and the ease with which we can return to it after the danger has passed. In fact, developing resilience requires experiencing moderate distress and having both the internal and external resources to overcome it. Positive experiences protect us from the negative effects of stress and adversity and help us heal from it after the danger is past. In general, positive experiences fall into 3 categories: strong families and communities, rich cultural traditions, and self-healing practices. The common thread is that protective factors require connection, relationships, and community. Strong families and communities are the bedrock of resilience. Research shows that a child who has even just one stable and safe adult in their life is more equipped to handle adversity. Food distributions aren't a family, but they are a part of the community, and they can help support neighbors who are experiencing food insecurity. Traditional knowledge, cultural values, and practices also provide protection and promote healing. This is why offering culturally appropriate foods and resources in languages that neighbors speak is so important. And then there are self-healing practices. As we go through our lifespan, we can gain the ability to care for ourselves and for others. A good diet, exercise, meditation, being in nature, all of these can help us heal and are examples of tools we can tap into to protect us and heal from stress. So in thinking about connection and relationships, we want to recognize all of the different ways your programming is helping and healing your community. Unfortunately, we can't rid the world of adversity and trauma. I know we all wish we could. If we think of those things like storm clouds, we can't change the weather, we can't stop the rain. But we do have tools at our disposal to protect ourselves, our neighbors, and our communities from the rain. Things like connection to resources, access to quality nourishment, education and sharing of knowledge, positive relationships, and promotion of interconnectedness among community members and support services. So when you hear trauma-informed nutrition security, you can imagine yourself holding this umbrella, protecting your neighbors from the storm of life. But while all of this is great information and hopefully helps you approach neighbors and your community with more empathy and compassion, it can feel very conceptual. So let's talk about some actionable ways we can enact these principles on the screen in our distributions. Specifically, let's talk about what we can do to promote resilience, share knowledge and support nourishment, and connect your neighbors with important resources. Positive experiences create resilience. One way to form that experience is by entering a warm, welcoming space where neighbors can interact positively with staff and volunteers. When thinking about a warm and welcoming environment, are there opportunities to make your space more inclusive, accessible, and overall welcoming? Do neighbors feel represented in the photos and artwork that is displayed on site? Is the space ADA compliant, and is food easy to access for people of all abilities? Are there foods offered that align with neighbors' cultural diets? Is there a comfortable place for neighbors to wait? Consider adding seating, water, maybe some recipes or informational reading materials for neighbors to leaf through while they wait. If your waiting area is outdoors, consider adding shade when the weather is hot and offering a warm place to wait when the weather is cold. Initiate intentional and authentic interactions with your neighbors. Positive interactions build positive relationships, which are the bedrock of resilience. Greet your neighbors and welcome them to the distribution. Ask them how they're doing and take the time to listen to their response. Is there anything else you can get for them? Get to know their names and try to greet them by name when they return. And don't forget to introduce yourself too. Regularly asking neighbors for input and then doing your best to implement their feedback is a great way to ensure your space is welcoming and prioritizes neighbor needs and voices. Sharing of knowledge and supporting nourishment are also positive experiences that you can offer at your distributions. Direct education, like cooking and nutrition classes, or doing on-site taste tests are great. It's a nice way to interact with neighbors and facilitate interaction amongst them, but it's not always possible. Even if you do offer direct education, still consider also offering indirect education. Signs, posters, recipe cards, and info sheets are a great way to share information in an easy-to-access way. You can see an example of indirect education in the photo on the left. Remember to share all written materials in as many languages as your neighbors speak. This ensures people of all backgrounds and cultures feel welcome at your distribution. Make nutritious options attractive and easy to access. We can do small things to encourage neighbors to try nutritious options while still allowing them to choose and respecting their autonomy. These are called nudges. One example of nudges could be placing nutritious items, like produce, at the beginning of the distribution line. Research shows that when this is done, shoppers take more of the nutritious items than when they are placed at the end. You could also add a colorful sign about the item to draw neighbors' attention there and help familiarize them with the product. Another way to make nutritious options attractive and familiar is to bundle an item with which neighbors are potentially unfamiliar with other products they know to show how easy it can be to make a meal out of these items. And it's even better if you can include a recipe card with it. Oftentimes, folks experiencing nutrition insecurity can benefit from support in other areas of their lives as well. Helping neighbors easily access other resources is a great way to show that the community is there to support them, regardless of what challenges they may be facing. Consider having a table or board with information about other resources available in the community. Things like housing support, childcare, job training, or clothing closets are just a few examples. If your agency can provide a warm referral for a neighbor to another service or agency, this can make the neighbor more likely to use that service. See if other organizations will host an informational table during your distribution. It's a great way to get neighbors connected with other resources and reduces the time they have to spend going from one agency to another. An example of this might be collaborating with one of Second Harvest's food share outreach specialists to come on site to support neighbors in answering questions and signing up for benefits. Now, let's review what we discussed today. Trauma is the result of an adverse event, how a person experienced it, and the effect that it had on them. Stress and adversity shrink our window of tolerance, making emotional regulation difficult. Positive experiences offset adversity and expand our window of tolerance. While we cannot rid the world of stress and adversity, we can provide positive experiences at our organizations to offset the burden of adversity and trauma. These are primarily rooted in positive relationships. Thank you.